Hey, what's up? It's Alex. Today I'd like to talk about the connected sounds in a sample answer to the prompt, describe a painting you've seen. Let's take a look. I remember I was in Boston a couple of years ago. I remember. When we speak quickly, at the beginning of sentences, sometimes those short, unstressed sounds tend to become even shorter. I remember, I remember, I remember, I remember, I remember. I remember I was in Boston. I was in. I was in Boston. We're going to connect I was in into one little phrase, and we're going to reduce that in was. I was in Boston. I remember I was in Boston. At the end of in, before the b in Boston, it actually turns into a m sound to connect with the b sound. I was in Boston. I remember I was in Boston. I was in Boston. I remember I was in Boston a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago. Couple of, so we take out the v in of. A couple of years ago. And I went to. And I went to. Almost every time you see and, you're going to take out the d in connected speech. And I went to. We're going to connect the n to t here. Went to. You can see that the ntt turns into just nt. Went to. Went to. I remember I was in Boston a couple of years ago and I went to one of the art museums there. One of the art museums. So here, we have the y sound at the end of the in order to get ready for the in art. Then we have art museums. I'm not saying a T there at the end of the word art. I'm saying a glottal stop. Art museums. It's cutting off in my throat instead of finishing the T sound. Art museums. One of the art museums there. And don't forget to take the v out of the word of there. One of the art museums there. Huge place, tons of paintings. And we're going to take out the v in of. Tons of paintings. Tons. And remember, we're going to connect these sounds as much as we can. Tons. I'm not adding anything between the z and sounds. Huge place, tons of paintings. And one I remember in particular. And one, take out that D and. One we're going to connect one and I. One I remember in particular, in very fast speech, just like in Boston, in particular, that N turns into an M. In particular. One I remember in particular was a painting from the 1880s. From the 18, we have that y sound connecting the 1880s, of four young girls, so here we have the v in of, but it's connected to f in four, so of four. The painting from the 1880s of four young girls. Connect that ng sound at the end of young with g in girls. Four young girls. A painting from the 1880s of four young girls playing in a huge house. In a huge house. Connect in into one little chunk. Playing in a huge house. It's a little hard to describe. It's a little hard to. Connect the D and the T there. Hard to. And we're going to reduce the vowel in to. Hard to. Hard to describe. Describe why. Describe why. You can see that b at the end of describe gets weakened before a w sound. Hard to describe why hard to describe why it was so memorable. It's kind of a funny sound when I slow down and say it in its connected form. Describe why. Describe why it was so memorable. Why it was so. So here we have a glottal stop for the T in it. Why it was. So was, that vowel in the word was gets reduced. Why it was so. Then we're going to connect the s in so with the z in the word before it, was. Why it was so. Hard to describe why it was so memorable. The light was really impressive. Again, we have a glottal stop for the T in light. The light was really impressive. Like the foreground was naturally lit, that ND in foreground was, reduces, and it's just kind of like foreground was. Foreground was naturally lit, and the background slowly faded. So here, Lit, we have a glottal stop there in lit, 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 and the background, drop the D in and connect the N to the TH. Lit, and the background slowly faded. Again, we kind of drop that D or weaken that D at the end of background. Background slowly faded into darkness. Kind of showing how large the house was. Kind of showing. So here, kind of. We could connect that to kinda. You could also connect it even further to kinda, kinda. Kind of showing how large the house was. And the color was great too. And the color. Drop the D, connect the N to the TH. And the color was great too. Great too. Connect the two T sounds there, at the end of great and the beginning of too. And the color was great too. It looked very realistic. It looked. We have a glottal stop there for the T. It looked. It looked very realistic. Now if I say it looked a little faster, that L can kind of even delete the T entirely. No glottal stop. If I speak it at a regular pace, it looked. That's fine. But if I say it even faster, it looked. It looked. This goes to what I was talking about earlier with reducing the sounds at the beginning of sentences. It looked. It looked. No T, no glottal stop. It looked. Now we can't do that in regular speed speech. It sounds a little weird if we don't have the glottal stops. We need to have those sounds. But in very fast speech, for certain very common phrases, you can take out that T, especially at the beginning of sentences like this. It looked. It looked very realistic, like a color photo even. Color photo even. We add a little W sound to connect these two vowels. Like a color photo even. Color photo even. I think the main thing, connect the N and TH, I think the main thing was its size. Its size. Connect these two S sounds here. Its size. I think the main thing was its size. It was like 7 feet tall. Here, it was is another example. At the beginning of a sentence, we can take out that T and not even have a glottal stop. It was like 7 feet tall. 7 feet tall. So here that N and F blend together and it's almost more of an M sound. 7 feet tall. 7 feet tall. We connect these two T sounds at the end too. Feet tall. It was like 7 feet tall. It was like 7 feet tall. It completely dominated the room. It completely, glottal stop T before the K in completely. It completely dominated the room. Connect the D and the TH here. It completely dominated the room. I wish I could remember its name. I wish I could remember. So that D before the R gets a little bit weaker. Could remember. You can say the full D there if you like too. It's totally fine. I wish I could remember. But you can also drop it. I wish I could remember its name. I remember I was in Boston a couple of years ago and I went to one of the art museums there. Huge place, tons of paintings, and one I remember in particular was a painting from the 1880s of 4 young girls playing in a huge house. It's a little hard to describe why it was so memorable. The light was really impressive, like the foreground was naturally lit and the background slowly faded into darkness, kind of showing how large the house was. And the color was great too. It looked very realistic, like a color photo even. I think the main thing was its size. It was like 7 feet tall. It completely dominated the room. I wish I could remember its name.